Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. It's November 10th, day before Veterans Day. We're getting closer and closer to the end, surprisingly, to the end of the NFL regular season. College football about a few weeks away from the regular season. Ari, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Like you said, it's crazy how fast the season has gone. I feel like we say that every year, pretty much. But we have already reached the double-digit mark of the NFL season, started tonight, and I'm looking forward to a fun finish in the NFL, as well as other sports that we'll eventually start to talk more about as we reach into further into November and December.
Yeah, as the college football season starts to wrap up, there's going to be a lot of MLB headlines coming out recently about free agency. We'll get into that in a little bit, but today we're going to do our Week 10 preview of the NFL, and it starts tonight in what will be a very, very boring Thursday night football matchup between the Falcons and Panthers. That may not be actually boring. I saw a weather report coming out of Charlotte earlier that there's potentially a hurricane-like weather over there, bunch of rain, bunch of wind. I saw this on it's on TikTok. Don't take it for everything, but I know there's a hurricane coming from the south from Florida, so it could be an interesting football weather game. If not, Atlanta is traveling to Charlotte. Look, Atlanta's right there for first place with Tampa Bay. The Falcons, right now getting Cordell Patterson back. He had an immediate impact in their game last week against the Chargers. Kind of even though the Falcons came up just a bit short, Cordell Patterson with his 2 touchdowns on the ground, immediate impact right there. And then for the Panthers, obviously they have pretty much done the full sell. They are looking on to next season after pretty much almost getting beat down by the Cincinnati Bengals last week. It was nice to see, Baker Mayfield get some reps and, get some late touchdowns, but it didn't matter because the Bengals are already up by so much. Now they have a home game against a division opponent, and the last time we saw these two teams was not even that long ago when the Falcons had to pretty much hold on to that lead thanks to a DJ Moore 15-yard penalty for taunting, which I feel like, shouldn't have happened anyway. But, the DJ Moore Hail Mary 15-yard right before the trade deadline happens. They missed the extra point, still a tie game. Now we get the rematch of that kind of crazy ending in Atlanta, now in Charlotte. Ari, what do you like in this game? Obviously, the backfield for the Panthers has been kind of the bigger question. What's the deal with Chuba Hubbard? Is Dante Foreman going to be the guy? Obviously they have DJ Moore, but, the quarterback situation is so wide open. Sam Darnold's coming off of IR. Baker Mayfield still is mid. And then they have PJ Walker. And then for the Falcons, obviously we talked about Cordell Patterson, but, there's guys in the backfield like Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier, who still get their reps as well. And then, where the hell is Drake London? It feels like he kind of just fell off this massive cliff pretty much after week 3. And, we haven't even seen that much of him. Kyle Pitts has started to emerge, but, it's still, pretty minimal at the best. What do you expect in this NFC South divisional matchup on Thursday?
Yeah, there's, a lot going on with both teams. Starting, with Atlanta, there's a team that wants to run. So there's just no passing volume for guys like Pitts and London to be reliable in any sense of the imagination. So I'm not trusting, Pitts or London. Either of them could break off a big play any given week, but in terms of volume and opportunity, they're really going to be big play, touch-independent guys at this point. In the backfield, you mentioned Mixon's performance last week against the Panthers, so we should see them continue to run the ball a lot. Atlanta, I think Patterson will still be the lead back, but there will be enough to go around for Algier. I think last week, I believe Patterson saw 12 carries, Algier 10, so I think we'll see another maybe 60-40 split, something like that between Patterson and Algier. And then the Panther side, obviously last week was a mess for the Panthers. They're down 35-0, I think, in the first half. I don't think that one game should overshadow what PJ Walker did the 2 games previously, who he kept the Panthers offense, somewhat competent, and Walker's back under center for Carolina tonight in this game. So I think the Panthers offense, will be better. I mean, they scored 21 points with Baker, but that was, when they were down 5 scores already at that point. So I think it's going to be a pretty tight game, similar to what we saw between these two teams, I think a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. I'm leaning towards the Panthers in this game. The Falcons are the favorite. Two pretty two bad defenses, just say it like that. But I don't know. I think Walker bounces back here. Mariota just missed too many passes downfield for me to trust him as a passer. I think Atlanta will get the run game going, and that will help lead their offense and make them competitive. But, we've seen Terrace Marshall, who did nothing as a rookie last year, kind of step up these past couple of weeks for Carolina. And then DJ Moore has been a little bit more reliable with PJ Walker. And their backfield, I think Foreman will still lead the backfield. Hubbard should be active, but coming off injury, Foreman's, been solid besides last week. But last week they completely abandoned the run game when they're down as much as they were, obviously. So it'll be a better game for Foreman tonight, in that backfield. So, I think Foreman, DJ Moore, I think will lead the Panthers to a win here in Carolina. You mentioned the weather, so we'll have to kind of see what that looks like. But, I mean, it's going to affect both teams. So I'm leaning towards Carolina, as underdog here straight up. But, hopefully it's another fun, exciting, high-scoring game like we saw between these two teams, a few weeks ago.
Yeah, you mentioned the game that was a couple weeks ago, and that if DJ Moore just did not get that 15-yard penalty, which was kind of, a little egregious, Panthers definitely would have won that game at the last second over the Falcons. So I feel like Carolina will get their revenge tonight at home versus this Falcons team. You've mentioned pretty much how that backfield looks like for Atlanta and how the Panthers, really struggled to pretty much handle Joe Mixon at all. The ground game last week for the Bengals was just running through Carolina, and I feel like, they'll definitely lean on that, especially if the weather is what apparently it's going to maybe look like with hurricane-like weather or something like that. You mentioned the other side for the Panthers. Terrace Marshall's a big name who started to emerge. I believe it was like 2 touchdowns, but they were so late for Baker Mayfield, it didn't even matter. And, you mentioned the Walker and Moore connection seems to, we saw that PJ Walker dime to DJ Moore in the end zone. So that's pretty much how the chemistry is going. It's really strong over there. I want to say the Panthers too. I just feel like this is definitely a revenge game for them. But it's definitely going to be dependent on how Atlanta gets the ground game going against such a struggling Panthers defense. Pretty much you mentioned both of these defenses really struggle on. So I feel like it's definitely going to be a bigger ground game. Short week. It's a Thursday night football game. I want to say the Falcons just because, they obviously have the better ground game against a weak Panthers run defense. But, I just feel like this is definitely the revenge game for Carolina. I feel like they get it home on and they get it done tonight. Definitely be interesting to see how the weather plays out, but that may be a minimal factor in the long run, depending on what it's really going to be like in a few hours. And heading into Sunday morning, hello, Munich, Germany. Seahawks face the Buccaneers, and I mean, I'm from what I'm hearing right now, it seems like it's almost a Seahawks home game from all the Seattle fans traveling to Munich or whatever, but this is going to be early. I'm going to be up at 6:16 in the morning, getting my coffee going and watching this game. Ari, look, this is definitely a big opportunity for a Seahawks team to really get some respect, beat Tom Brady and, that high potent offense that the Buccaneers have, names like Fournette, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, list goes on. But the one thing that the Buccaneers lack is a good O-line to really protect Brady. And then obviously for the Seahawks, it's the Geno Smith show. He's been doing that all season. Kenneth Walker behind him, offensive rookie of the year candidate. Pretty much, I think he just was voted midseason offensive rookie of the year by some fans on Fox. So that's, occasion that he's having a career year. Defensively, I'd like to see how Tariq Woolen really matches up well against, a lanky like Mike Evans, who definitely has the size that kind of matches Tariq Woolen because they both have that length and size. Ari, what are you looking for here? This is definitely going to be a struggle for the Seahawks defense to get the run going against the Bucks, who have one of the better run defenses. So maybe a limited opportunity for Kenneth Walker to really break out in the open. This may be his first big test. And then obviously for the Buccaneers, definitely lacking a solid offensive line, a lot of pass rush maybe getting to Brady. What do you like offensively for both teams in Germany on Sunday morning?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bucks and Brady have struggled, but even then, the Bucks are still a 3-point favorite, so clearly they're still being respected even with their struggles. So I think that this would be a pretty big statement win for the Seahawks. I think it's kind of funny because I think before the season, the NFL schedule makers, those people were kind of booking this game as a Brady crushing a bad Seahawks team in the first game in Germany, and now you look over VR and it's kind of the complete opposite of that. Yeah, I mean, you talk about the Bucks offensive line struggles, and the Seahawks have 10 sacks, I believe, in the last 2 games combined. So I see that, continuing for both sides in terms of, a lot of pressure being on Brady. And so that's why I definitely have my, expectations limited for the entire Bucks offense. I mean, it's tough to sit Evans, but, we saw Wolin hold his own against Hopkins last week. And I think it has a good chance to be more of the same. Against Evans, Godwin should still see his targets, but I don't think it's a favorable matchup for either of them, in this regard. And then, Fournette, we could see more Rashad White. We've heard rumors of, recently. So that offense is a complete mess. But like you said, they still have a strong defense. So I don't see the Seahawks, scoring probably like 30 plus points. But I still think the Seahawks offense is going to be too much, compared to the Bucks offense. I think it's possible that, the passing attack can help open up the run game for the Seahawks. So, Walker has a tough matchup. They'll still see, probably 20, 25, plus touches. And so just from a pure volume standpoint, he's still an RB1. I'm looking for Geno to continue to just do what he's been doing all season in terms of his consistency and, not in terms of limiting the mistakes. Last week with the Cardinals pass rush, we kind of saw him throw quite a bit to Fant in the middle of the field. So I think we could see a similar game plan this week against the Bucks pass rush. But, Lockett and Metcalf will still get their looks, on the outside. I think the Seahawks offense, I don't think they're going to blow the Bucks out, but they're going to be too much at the end of the day. I don't see the Bucks offense really doing much just based off what we've seen from them, paired with the Seahawks defense the past 4 weeks. So, I'm going to Seahawks moving to 7-3 after this week.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely going to be one of those games where, offense really starts struggling to get going. Brady's offensive line struggles. Seahawks, 10 sacks in the last 2 games definitely can get to the quarterback. Shelby Harris and, Nwosu, they definitely like to get to the quarterback, especially after last game. And then on the other side, the run defense for the Buccaneers can try to stop Kenneth Walker. I like the Seahawks definitely in this game, just with how, Geno will still getting his looks to DK, as you mentioned, and Tyler Lockett. An emerging Noah Fant as well. I like how he's been playing as of recently as well for the Seahawks offense. And I feel like he can be a big X factor in this game with with not a great secondary for Tampa Bay right now. I definitely like the Seahawks, but they love to have us as the underdog. And you mentioned this was supposed to be an easy game for Brady before he goes on the bye, and now it looks like this may be a kind of a must win to kind of save the Buccaneers season, or a big key win for the Seahawks. Trying to go to 7-3 heading into their bye. I like the Seahawks in this game too, just because I don't think the offense for the Buccaneers really gets going with all the struggles they've been going through offensively in the past few weeks, trying to get their offensive line situated. And I like the Seahawks in this game in Munich, Germany. Now heading into the later morning slate, the Stephon Diggs revenge game. Here we go. Vikings going to Buffalo to play the Bills. Obviously, Stephon Diggs may have a little bit of a personal side to this, as he's playing his former team that traded him in the offseason. I believe it was the 2020 offseason, shipped him off to the Bills, and Stephon Diggs has pretty much taken off to be that top receiver because, we talked about how Minnesota always had Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and, they were definitely that 1-2 combination. And then, Stephon Diggs gets shipped off, and then the Vikings draft Justin Jefferson, pretty much his successor. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how Justin Jefferson as well goes against a very good Buffalo defense that's starting to get healthy at the right time, even though they had a tough loss on the road to the good Jets team. Look, one of the bigger concerns heading into this game is Josh Allen's health. And, there's been a lot of rumors about what it could be and what it is. I've heard potential Tommy John surgery, even though he's a football player. I've heard even just a little bit of an elbow sprain, a UCL sprain. There's so much going on that kind of is surrounding the Bills season right now in terms of Josh Allen's health. So that would definitely be a big question. But, I haven't heard anything pretty outlandish as of recently. And then for the Vikings, obviously, they're one of the more Cinderella stories. We talked about them on our last podcast about how they can, really cement themselves as a for real team. And here they go, their biggest test of the season, going to a Super Bowl contending Bills organization. Ari, let's talk about it offensively for both teams. I feel like this is definitely going to be a shootout. For the Vikings, obviously, they have that offense. I just don't know what their defense may look like against the Bills' offense. That is very high octane, very potent. Obviously struggled last week against a good Jets defense. But what do you like in this game, in this morning slot? Maybe on the ground game for Dalvin Cook and, maybe in the air for Josh Allen. Potentially, if he stays healthy, that's definitely the bigger question going into Sunday, right?
Yeah, I mean, the big question is his health. And if he is silent, he missed practice yesterday, Wednesday, and today, Thursday. So he's going to have to get some sort of limited practice in tomorrow and Friday to probably have a chance of playing. I'm leaning towards them probably resting him to play it safe, to which it could be a revenge game, I believe, right? The backup quarterback for not just Diggs, but Case Keenum too, for the Bill. I think Brady's the backup, I believe. So obviously Josh Allen not playing completely changes the game entirely for so many different reasons. So that's why I'm taking the Vikings right now based off my assumption that Josh Allen will probably not be playing. But we'll have to kind of monitor his status tomorrow and Friday to see, if he is able to practice. I think that they probably care more about keeping him healthy for the whole season than just winning this one game. So that's why I'm kind of assuming they probably sit him to be super cautious, with this elbow injury that he suffered last week. Obviously, I think Keenan will still be good enough to keep the Bills, certainly in the game, even though Josh Allen's out. I think the Vikings offense will be too much, if Josh Allen is out. On the Viking side, it's a great for both sides. Like you said, it's a great receiver matchup between Dick and Jefferson. I think they'll continue to get Dalvin Cook going. Another week of having TJ Hawkinson, in the offense for Minnesota, which he caught 9 passes last week in his first game with the team, which is big. So yeah, I mean, I think this is entirely dependent on the health of Josh Allen for me in this game, and it will be something to monitor, tomorrow, Friday, and then potentially Saturday and Sunday morning.
Yeah, the whole Josh Allen situation is kind of dependent on who's going to win this game. If Allen is healthy and ready to go, as some people may say, then I would definitely take the Bills over them just because, Josh Allen is that MVP playmaker for that offense. And then if they're going to rest him, obviously, and, kind of make him more ready for the end of the season, which is a lot smarter, then I definitely pick the Vikings. But I feel like, Case Keenum may show some – not a lot of people believed in Case Keenum when he was in Minnesota. So, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's the backup. I'm not 100% sure. You may want to look into that. But if he is, then I'd love to see him face his former team as well. There was the Minnesota Miracle when they beat the Saints to move on to the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. And, why not do it against them?
Keenum, yeah.
Yeah, so, and, you have the receiver and the quarterback. All you need is just the same pass. So, but I think this is going to be a fun game either way. I feel like this may be low scoring if Josh Allen is not fully healthy, but I still like to see these two teams really have a shootout. Right now, I'm going to take the Bills just because of the fact that Josh Allen is considered he's playing until I hear that. But as soon as I hear that, I'd probably switch it over and pick the Vikings. but I'm not going to rule out a Case Keenum revenge game. So I'd love to see how that happens, but I'd like to pick the Vikings over the Bills if Josh Allen is not playing. Continuing in the morning slate here, we have the Lions and Bears NFC North divisional matchup. Lions coming off their biggest win of the season against the Packers at home, really limiting Aaron Rodgers, making him look like one of the worst quarterbacks in football right now. I mean, the Bears pretty much looking like one of the best offenses in football, with with Justin Fields, pretty much elevating his game to a whole new level on the ground. And then, he's pretty much one of the best fantasy QBs right now with his dual threat, rushing for over 100 yards last week, getting it done in the air as well, with, I think, 2 touchdowns to Cole Kmet at the tight end position. And we already talked about how the Lions already have a really bad run defense on this season. And, definitely looks like the Bears may look to expose that at home. What do you like offensively for both teams, Ari?
Yeah, I mean, we talked in our last episode, about Justin Fields and his progression, and this should be another big week for him against the Lions defense. Obviously, the Lions shut down Rodgers, like you said last week, but I think that continues this week. It's a favorable matchup for both Montgomery and Khalil Herbert against the Lions' run defense. And then we'll see if Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet can continue their successful, recent performance. And then we'll see Claypool his second week with the team, how he, does with the team in Fields. And on the Lions side, you have a Lions offense against a depleted Bears defense that traded arguably their 2 best players, at the deadline. So it should be a pretty high scoring game between these 2 teams. The big question with the Lions is their backfield and Swift, if he'll be limited again or if he'll see a bigger role. Right now, Jamal Williams is safer until we see Swift see that bigger role. I'm hopeful that Swift isn't limited the rest of the season. I hope he doesn't see 2 carries, each week the rest of the season like he saw last week. But right now, Williams is safer between the 2 of them. But I think the Bears offense, will be a little bit too much with Fields, rushing ability and just overall playmaking ability. So I have the Bears here at home, but also the over, might be worth a look as well.
I definitely take the over as well. I feel like this is definitely going to be a very offensive game, as you mentioned. You mentioned the running back position room for David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert against a really bad Lions rush defense. I feel like all three of them, Fields, Herbert, and Monty can have great games on the ground. The Lions offense is definitely a little more intriguing right now. They didn't really get anything going against the Packers, even though they had many opportunities to do so. Didn't really get anything going. I expect them to have a bounce back week, even though you mentioned DeAndre Swift was really limited last week. I hope that's not the case throughout the rest of the season, but you mentioned right now Jamal Williams is definitely kind of more the safer play. So I definitely agree with you there. I like to take the Bears at home. You mentioned how the Bears pretty much got rid of everybody on their defense. And I feel like, they're just more focused on, maintaining a solid offense to keep them in those competitive games. And, last week against Miami, they were in it for a little while. So, but I think the Bears get it done at home against a really bad Lions defense. Continuing in the morning slate, we have the Broncos traveling to Tennessee to play the Titans. Broncos coming off their bye. Titans coming off a big win a close loss to the Chiefs on the road on Sunday night. Malik Willis, didn't really look okay. He was in his first ever true start at the quarterback position with Tannehill being out. And, it was the Derrick Henry show for a pretty good time and, field goal and back and forth. And, the Chiefs get it done in the end, getting the win at home, even though look at the Titans, we're just really getting to Mahomes all night, just a really good defensive strategy drawn up by Mike Vrabel and that Titans organization to really limit Mahomes to the best that he could, even though they threw for almost over 400 yards. Mahomes is still going to Mahomes, but now they play a worse offense in the Broncos this week. The Broncos offense still has not really got anything going yet. It's been one of their biggest hardships to really get an offense going for Denver after trading for Russell Wilson in the offseason. Ari, look, I would really love to see Derrick Henry run through this defense, obviously, but the Broncos do have a very good defense, and for Russell Wilson, can he finally get it going against the Titans defense that limited Mahomes enough, but Mahomes still threw for over 400 yards. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes, did what he does, but they still did a good job limiting them in terms of, the points they scored, obviously. And Tannehill was a full participant in practice today, so he should be back this week. And so that will at least, make their passing offense at least a little bit more competent at being able to throw downfield. Obviously the Broncos have been arguably the most disappointing team so far this season compared to expectations, or at least, they're up there. We'll see if the bye week can help them, turn a corner to close the season. But until I see it, I'm not gonna trust it. Obviously, their defense isn't really good, Denver, but I still think Henry will do what he does, and he'll do enough to be able to lead the Titans offense downfield. And then with Tannehill back, it should make them a little bit better offensively as a passing unit. So I think Tennessee here at home takes it. Two good defenses. I think it will be a pretty low-scoring game. The Tennessee will look to, keep the game on the ground with Henry, and then the Broncos, I think, we'll see. Like I said, we'll see if they can turn a corner after the bye week. But Titans offense did really well against Mahomes, despite him throwing for 400 yards. They still did a good job of keeping him out of the end zone, for the most part. And so I think that they're going to do the same against Denver here. So I think Tennessee bounces back at home and defeats Denver.
Yeah, I feel like Tennessee definitely will bounce back. I feel like if they can limit Mahomes in the red zone and in the end zone, I feel like they can do the same for Russell Wilson, especially when Russell Wilson does it to himself. But yeah, I feel like Derrick Henry will definitely get himself another big game on the ground. That's kind of what he does. He always is one of the key reasons as to why Tennessee is always hanging around, just because Derrick Henry's ground game is something unreal that we've seen in the NFL. You mentioned that Malik Willis is probably not going to be starting again because Tannehill is a full participant and he's probably going to be back for Sunday. So they definitely get their quarterback back. I remember seeing that Traylon Burks is coming off of IR, and that can definitely be a big get. They've been missing some wide. I mean, last week, we saw the tweet from AJ Brown. Titans had no receivers. The Titans had no receivers. They
did just activate Traylon Burks though to return off IR, so that should help them a lot.
Yeah, I'm about to say activating Traylon Burks off of IR, that's definitely a big get. But it's definitely been a big struggle for guys like Robert Woods and that whole receiving core for the Titans. Now they get their quarterback back, so maybe it'll be an improvement this week against the Broncos. But the Broncos have a good secondary, but I definitely like to take the Titans at home, just because I feel like in this low-scoring game, Derrick Henry will still be able to get it done against the Broncos at home. Moving on to our next game in the morning slate, the Jaguars going to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Jags, look, they come off a win against the Raiders, but it wasn't pretty. Derek Carr had many opportunities to drive down that field. A lot of people calling for Josh McDaniels' job because of his play calling ability. So I'd say the Jaguars escaped with a win against the Raiders at home. And then the Chiefs, as we just mentioned, coming off that big win against the Titans. Look, Ari, I feel like this is definitely going to be the Patrick Mahomes, he's an MVP candidate once again. I feel like it's definitely going to be a big game for him at home. For the Jaguars, obviously Trevor Lawrence, he's still a decently good quarterback. I'd like to see, him put up some good numbers against, one of the best teams in the NFL on the road. But it's definitely going to be hard to play in Arrowhead. It's hard to play in Arrowhead as in general. You're going against Patrick Mahomes as well. What do you like in this game between the Jags and the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much to say. It should be a Chiefs blowout win. Obviously, as we've seen in the NFL this season, anything can happen. And we've seen, bigger surprises, and whatnot, but it should be a Chiefs blowout. Mahomes, we saw him throw 400 yards against the Titans defense. He might throw for 500 against the Jaguars defense. We'll see if, I think we could see some garbage time in the second half for Lawrence and Etienne and the Jaguars offense, but the Chiefs should control it pretty easily from the start. At home, looking to continue their momentum as they look to stay atop the AFC West. The Chargers are still right behind them, so they're not cruising to the division win right now. So yeah, it should be a pretty easy win for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I feel like the Chiefs should definitely win this. As you mentioned, anything can happen in the NFL, but the Chiefs should definitely win this at home. I'd like to see, the Chiefs maybe establish a little more of the run game. Obviously, not leaning on Mahomes all the time, especially if he faces better pass defenses. And we didn't really get to see that much of Clyde Edwards-Helaire last week as well, and he's definitely been dropping off. We didn't get to see that much of Pacheco as well. So maybe them establishing a run game in this win, but I feel like the Chiefs will definitely dominate this game against the Jags at home. Moving on from that game, we're moving on to South Beach. Browns going down to play the Dolphins. Obviously, Dolphins, one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best receiving core in the league. Jalen Waddle, their offense is pretty much one of the best in the country right now. The Browns, look, they come off, I believe they had a bye. And before that bye, they played on Halloween night where they defeated the Bengals in dominant fashion and looked like their defense was back. Nick Chubb, was still cruising through every defense. I would like to see Nick Chubb do that again against the Dolphins that pretty much didn't know how to handle Justin Fields, and now they're playing one of the best true running backs in Nick Chubb at home. And then, Miami, I feel like this is definitely going to be a high-scoring game as well. Tua, he always makes every game high-scoring with that deep ball threats on both sides with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Ari, what do you like in this game between the Browns and Dolphins in South Beach?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Dolphins in a lot of high-scoring games this season. I think that this will be another one of those high-scoring games. We saw them struggle to stop Fields as a runner last week. I think Chubb will continue to have his own. I think we could see Kareem Hunt have one of those bigger games this season as well this week. There's that. But in the Dolphins offense, I think we'll do what they've been doing all season as well. You mentioned the Browns pass improving before the bye week, but I think just with how dynamic the Dolphins passing offense is and just getting rid of the ball quick to Waddle and Hill or letting them go deep will just be too much, for the Browns defense. Their secondary has been a little bit more vulnerable at times, despite the passers being, pretty good as well at times. So it should be another high-scoring game, for Miami, but I do see Miami prevailing in the end. Last week we saw Jeff Wilson and Mostert have a pretty even role, so we'll see if that remains or if one of them kind of takes the edge over the other. I think they'll both continue to have a fairly even role between the two of them in the backfield, but it's really about the Dolphins' passing offense. And, you mentioned Tua, Waddle, Hill, even Gesicki at times as well. So it should be another big game for Tua, and I think the Dolphins will prevail in another pretty close, high-scoring game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is definitely the Dolphins to win right here. The Browns, they definitely struggle with the deep ball, and we saw that game against the Jets early in the season where they gave up so many deep balls to Joe Flacco, and their receiving core and the Jets. I feel like this is definitely just going to be a bunch of deep balls. They struggle in communication in the secondary, and you have speed with Tua and Jalen on each side. It's definitely going to be offensive game on both sides. I like the Dolphins at home, and we're getting closer and closer to that Deshaun Watson return game. That's definitely going to be something we talk about getting more near his return. I believe he's a few weeks away from his suspension being over. So maybe the Browns maybe turn it around after they get him back. We'll see. But now it seems like they're turning around at the right time. So we'll find out what happens on Sunday. But I definitely see the Dolphins winning this game. Moving on, we are still in the morning slate. The Houston Texans, who just lost a somewhat close game on Thursday night to the Philadelphia Eagles at home. They traveled to New York to play the Giants, who are coming off their bye. Or I believe, is this in Houston or is this in New York? I don't remember.
It's in New York.
Oh, yeah, it's in New York. Look, Saquon Barkley and that offense, Saquon Barkley. That is the New York Giants offense right now. It'll be interesting to see what the Giants do, obviously coming off of their bye week. They had a week off. I believe the last time we saw them, I think they lost to the Seahawks. It's been a while. Daniel Jones and that offense really, in an NFL game off the bye. Texans, they kept it competitive against the Eagles, obviously. But that was, Thursday night football, and, anything happens on Thursday night. But I feel like the Texans, obviously, with the worst rushing defense, it's going to be a field day for Saquon Barkley. He's going to be having fun running up and down all around on that stuff. And I feel like Daniel Jones may expose him as well, since he is now getting more in the run game. Ari, what do you think? Is this going to be the Saquon Barkley show or what?
Yeah, I think it's a good spot for a bounce that week for the Giants offense. Against a poor Texans defense, to say the least. The Giants did have the loss over the bye week of Xavier McKinney. During the bye, he went to Cabo and was in he was doing a guided tour on he hurt his hand or broke his wrist or some sort of hand injury, I want to say. And so, he's a pretty big blow to the Giants, losing him to the Giants defense, but I don't think it would make a huge difference against the Texans offense as all sorts of, Dameon Pierce has been really good, obviously, but their passing offense has been pretty much nowhere to be found. They should get Cooks back this week, but even with them before, earlier in the season, they weren't doing much. So I think it should be a pretty easy win for the Giants at home to bounce back, from their loss against the Seahawks before the bye week.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You mentioned the Xavier McKinney loss. I feel like that may be a injury that may affect the Giants more down the road, but against pretty much one of the worst offensive teams in football in terms of getting the pass game going. And, the run game, obviously led by Dameon Pierce, it's kind of their whole offense. I feel like the Giants, get the easy win at home against this Texans team that is, racing for C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. Moving on to the next game in the morning, the Saints are traveling up to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. I believe the Steelers are coming off their bye as well, if I'm not mistaken. The Saints, they had a tough loss at home against the Ravens on Monday night. Offense really just couldn't get anything going. Their defense couldn't stop Lamar Jackson in that offense. Look, I feel like this is definitely a better matchup for the Saints, going against a defense that has struggled a lot this year. We saw that Steelers game. The last time we saw him was against the Eagles when A.J. Brown was just pretty much destroying that whole secondary with 3 touchdowns. Definitely a big opportunity for like a Chris Olave to really break out. I believe Jarvis Landry may be coming back for the Saints for the first time in a while. So, definitely having them back is, definitely huge if they want to, at least try to come back and contend in the NFC South. Look, obviously the Steelers, their offense has been one of the bigger struggles. There's been questions about whether Najee Harris is the guy because, he's missing some, really open holes on offense to really gain some yards, and he's kind of struggling to get himself going. And then, the whole situation with Matt Canada, it turns out like, there's a lot more deeper issues with that. They just shipped off Chase Claypool, so this is their first game without him. It's going to be kind of led by Deontay Johnson now in that receiving core. What do you expect for the Steelers, and what do you like from the Saints?
Yeah, I don't like too much on either team. I'm kind of 50-50 on who I think wins this game. The Steelers have been a mess, like on for both the running game and the passing game. There's been rumors of potentially Jalen Warren seeing more work in the backfield, behind Najee Harris, and Harris potentially seeing his workload reduced. So that would be something to monitor in that regard. You mentioned Chase Claypool being gone, so we'll see more of Deontay and Pickens and Freiermuth in the passing game, with Kenny Pickett, against what should be a strong Saints defense, struggled against Baltimore, but they should be better, I think, against Pittsburgh. And then with the Saints, they're a complete mess quarterback-wise. Winston's healthy, but they're still running out Dalton. Kamara, the whole offense was shut down last week against Baltimore, but I think they should bounce back against Pittsburgh here for the most part. Michael Thomas done for the season, so there's not too much, in that, receiving core overall. We've seen Jerwan Johnson step up a bit as of late. There's always Taysom Hill is always capable of a big play, but that's what he's dependent on is that big play. But yeah, I mean, I think Kamara will be enough offensively for the Saints to bounce back here and beat the Steelers on the road. But I probably like the under in this game betting wise over picking a side.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I feel like these two offenses have definitely struggled. I don't know what's going on down in New Orleans with that quarterback situation. Obviously, you mentioned Winston's healthy, but they keep sending out Dalton. So I feel like maybe there's going to be a quarterback change coming in the coming weeks down in New Orleans. And for the Steelers, I mean, you mentioned Jalen Warren getting more reps just because Najee Harris is just not really seeing any holes and his workload is getting reduced. So I just take the whole total under as well. But if I had to pick anyone, I feel like the Saints may get a bounce back win against a struggling Steelers defense on the road. Now moving on, I believe this is the afternoon slate. Yeah, this is the start of the afternoon slate on the West Coast and on the East Coast. Colts traveling to Las Vegas to play the Raiders, and I mean, oh boy. Do you want to start with the Colts? I mean, the Colts obviously fired Frank Reich. They got Jeff Saturday up there, and oh boy, I mean look, we saw the tweet from Jeff Saturday when he was still an analyst on ESPN talking about the Raiders suck. Well, we'll see how bad they are once they play your team now. I have no hopes for the Colts, obviously. They've been one of the more disappointing teams. A lot of people had high hopes for them. It was Matt Ryan's team, and then he left, and then it was Sam Ellinger's, and he looks absolutely horrible, and they lost in really bad fashion last week to the Patriots, and now they just fired their head coach after a bad start, and now they got to play a struggling Raiders team. So this is going to be a bad game offensively on both sides. It's just going to be a bad game. Ari, I can see you shaking your head. This is going to be a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is even worse than the Saints Steelers game in terms of watching. I mean, Matt Ryan's back practicing, so maybe he's back under center for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, I think, was a full practice today, so he should be back, which will help the Colts. Raiders, all kinds of banged up. They placed both Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow on IR today, so they'll both miss at least 4 games. So it's really just Josh Jacobs and Matt Collins, and then obviously Devontae Adams, on the Raiders offense, and they can't even seem to hold a lead. I think they blew a big lead, I believe, right last week against the Jaguars. This is another one to bet the under if you're betting this game. I'm leaning towards the Colts, getting Taylor back offensively. And then I think hopefully they get Matt Ryan back under center because even though he's been bad, he's at least better than Ellinger. He'll at least keep drives alive more than Ellinger. So we'll see what that holds. But I mean, even if Ellinger starts, obviously he got sacked 9 times last week against the Patriots, but the week before he was at least competent against the Commanders. And I think the Raiders aren't the Patriots in terms of their defense, so it's a better matchup, for him and the Colts offense. So, I think the Colts will probably win, but maybe it's one of those games where it ends in a tie as well. So, I'm leaning towards the Colts, but another game where I'm betting the under before I bet a side.
This is going to be a bad game. I mean, Jeff Saturday, when he was coaching, I think, high school football in Georgia, he didn't even look that impressive in high school football. How are you going to do in the NFL as an interim head coach? And, oh, brother. And then for the Raiders, they can't hold on to a lead. So this is going to be an ugly game. I feel like this may end, 2020 and call it a tie, Colts tie for the second time this season. Well, this is going to be bad. Let's just move on to the next game. Heading it later on into the afternoon slate, the Cowboys and Packers, this renewed rivalry. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers knows this Cowboys team. Dak Prescott knows the Packers. But this Packers team is a little different because they don't have Devontae Adams and their offense is really bad. I just saw a report come out this week that the Packers wide receivers are kind of fed up with kind of being called the scapegoat for Aaron Rodgers' struggles this year. And I kind of agree with them. Like, Aaron Rodgers looked really bad last week, and it wasn't even against the receivers. And now you got to play pretty much one of the best teams in football on defense in the Cowboys. Trayvon Diggs, Micah Parsons is definitely a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. His ability to just get into the backfield is ridiculous. That offense for the Cowboys is finally, getting themselves under their own foot. Kind of been one of the bigger struggles this year, obviously, when Dak went down, but now he's back. They still have Zeke in the backfield, who is, I think, will be back this week. Tony Pollard, but Tony Pollard is still the better running back out of the 2-0, I believe, just because he has that breakaway speed. Look, I feel like this is definitely going to be a Cowboys win, unfortunately, even though you know how much I hate those Cowboys. But what do you like from the Packers, and what do you like from the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys have had one of the best defenses in the league this year, and I think that will continue. We saw the Lions' bottom three defense shut down the Packers last week in Aaron Rodgers, and it should be more of the Cowboys, pass rush getting, to Aaron Rodgers in the pocket. Aaron Jones is banged up. Lazard is a little bit banged up as well. Cowboys, I think, coming off their bye, I believe, right? And so they'll be fresh and ready. And we've seen Dak get better with, as he's seen the field more since he came back from his injury. So I think it's going to be a pretty easy Cowboys win. And I have zero confidence in Rodgers this week doing much. Lazard should be fine just from a pure volume standpoint with the Packers receiving core completely banged up. Jones is banged up, but he's been practicing, so he should be on the field. But that won't be enough for the Packers to pull this off, and they'll continue to trend in the wrong direction as the Cowboys, win another game here.
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely going to be a Cowboys win just because they have one of the best defenses in the league, and they're well rested against the struggling Packers offense that can't even move down the field correctly. I feel like this is definitely going to be one of the easier wins for the Cowboys on the season when they travel up to Green Bay to play the Packers. Heading into the afternoon slate as well, Cardinals traveling to LA to play the Rams. Kyler Murray returns to the home where he got embarrassed in the wild card game against the Rams. But the Rams obviously have been struggling. They come off a loss on the road against the Bucs, where that offense really struggled. And we mentioned earlier this week that Jalen Ramsey even called out the offense for not even just getting a first down on that final drive that kind of led to the Brady comeback against the Rams. And then obviously the Cardinals, they're coming off a loss against the Seahawks. They could not find anything offensively. Kyler Murray was getting sacked left, right, and center. Him and DeAndre Hopkins had a little bit of a disagreement on the sideline too. So, maybe it's Kyler Murray versus the organization right now. And then there's the whole Cliff Kingsbury situation. There's just a bunch of problems offensively for the Cardinals. And then we talked about it, how, they picked off Geno for a pick six, but then that defense couldn't stop him on 3 straight drives. And for the Rams, they just can't find an offense to really get going. They had that big play for Cooper Kupp that ended up being the 66-yard touchdown. But, offensively, still a big struggle year for the Rams. What do you like in this game between these two division teams in the NFC West?
Well, there's the big news yesterday that McVay said that Stafford's in concussion protocol. And so that's, a huge – and he missed practice again today. So, I mean, maybe he could still be cleared if he practices tomorrow on Friday. He could be cleared by Saturday. But right now it's trending in the wrong direction. So it's looking to be John Wolford against Kyler Murray.
Oh.
I was already leaning towards the Cardinals slightly in this game, and now for sure Stafford's out. I'm going the Cardinals. Obviously, their team is a complete mess, but they're still, pretty good offensively overall. Another week of a healthy James Conner in the backfield, and then obviously Kyler will have the Hopkins-Ramsey matchup, which is always fun between those two. But the Rams' offensive line's a complete mess, and the Cardinals, all their defense struggled against the Seahawks, late in that game. Their pass rush has still been good at times, and so it should be pretty good against this Rams offensive line. And so, I'm going the Cardinals here, but I don't think that it means that they're heading in the right direction. It just means that they're beating a banged-up Rams team that has not been good either this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like this is definitely going to be a Cardinals win, but it's not a convincing win considering they have a bunch of offensive struggles. And then, but the Rams' offensive struggles, I mean, that's a whole nother story. And now potentially no Matt Stafford, who's in concussion protocol. So that means we get to see John Wolford once again. start the game on Sunday against this Cardinals team. So that's going to be an ugly game to watch. I take the Cardinals as well, just because I feel like they have a bounce back game after losing at home to the Seahawks. And when they had a lead, but just couldn't find that offense to get going in the second half, and their defense couldn't stop the Seahawks offense on 3 straight drives. And then heading into the Sunday night matchup in San Francisco in the Bay Area, Niners coming off their bye. They host the Chargers, who get a bounce back win against the Falcons. Obviously, the Niners, they look like one of the better teams in the NFC right now that can really compete with the Eagles offensively. They traded for Christian McCaffrey, obviously one of the best running backs right now. He was pretty much every offensive position you could really think of in that game against the Rams. He threw a touchdown, he ran for a touchdown, he caught a touchdown. So pretty much the whole offense. They still have Jimmy Garoppolo center. There's rumors that Deebo Samuel will be back for this game too. So definitely getting a big offensive weapon back after not playing against the Rams. And I know he definitely really wanted to play against that Rams team. And then for the Chargers, they come off a big win against the Falcons on the road, but they did not look pretty at all. That offense really struggled to move down the field. They're still missing Keenan Allen still. Palmer stepped up. He had a big game in the receiving core. Eckler, he had a big game, almost a costly fumble at the last second. So I expect him to have a bounce back game. But, this Niners defense has been tough all year, and it continues to be tough. I know they just lost Jason Verrett, so that's another big loss for that Niners secondary. I believe it was an ACL tear or something like that.
Achilles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and, just horrible loss in that secondary. You kind of feel for him. He's always been that guy who has, gotten the chance, but, just gets injured, and you kind of feel bad for him. But, in the end, Chargers-Niners is going to be a good Sunday night football game. Ari, what do you like offensively for both of these teams?
Yeah, you mentioned, the struggles of the Chargers last week. Still able to win, but their offense did not look great. And Keenan Allen stayed today, so he could play this week, but I think next week's probably more likely for him to play. So it's probably going to be another week of, Josh Palmer, Dante Carter, and Gerald Everett, along with Eckler, leading that offense. And the Niners coming off their bye the week before, he mentioned their offense clicking on all cylinders, and that was without Deebo, who should be back this week. I think the 49ers pass rush will get to Herbert quite a bit this week. And the Chargers have one of the worst run defenses in the league, and the Niners should take advantage of that. With McCaffrey, and they might get Mitchell back this week, either this week or next week. We'll have to see. So, either way, the Niners are going to probably cruise a pretty easy win. I'm rooting for the Chargers, as a Seahawks fan, but I think the Niners are going to continue to click on all cylinders in this game offensively against a banged-up Chargers defense that's still missing. We could have the Bosa brothers, face each other, but they're still without Joey Bosa. The Chargers are, and that's really been a huge loss for their run defense. And so I think we're going to see the Niners offense again have another huge game. And Herbert will do his best to keep them, in this game. But I think the Niners will be too strong in the end, and will win. I think pretty convincingly in the end.
Yeah, I feel like this Niners offense, obviously you mentioned McCaffrey, and the Chargers have a really bad run defense. The Chargers will definitely try to stop McCaffrey as much as they can, but, McCaffrey loves getting in the open. And, we saw the week before their bye, the Niners really use him on all positions of the field. And I feel that continues, especially against a good Rams defense. I feel like this is definitely the McCaffrey game that's just going to convince people that he's back fishing. And then, you mentioned the Bosa brothers. I hope the better bros. I hope the better Bosa bro. I'm talking about Joey here because Nick, the racist. I would hope he's coming, but obviously he's not playing. So, but I expect as a Seahawks fan, I don't want to see the Niners win, but the Niners will probably win this game at home. It's just first game off the bye. They have Deebo back. They're getting healthy offensively. Chargers still banged up in the defense, still banged up on offense. I think this is the Niners game to win here on Sunday night in Santa Clara. And then heading into the final game of the week, Monday night, the Commanders traveling to the still undefeated undefeated, 8-0. Look, you can call it all they want. You could say that it's been a cupcake schedule when, they haven't played anyone tough, but, they're still 8-0 and no one has beat them yet. So you kind of have to take it what it is. But now they welcome a Commanders team that, as we talked about, blowing that lead at home against a good Vikings team to Kirk Cousins, and just didn't really know how to run an offense after they got to that 17-7 lead. Taylor Heineke throwing the interception in their own territory, and then obviously the Eagles, they're playing the best football right now. Jalen Hurts is an MVP candidate. That offense is one of the best in football. Miles Sanders has seemed to really get his groove going as of late. He had a big game against Houston last week, and then offensively they still have A.J. Brown, who's one of the bigger names. They still have Devontae Smith. Defensively, they seem to be just getting better and better. They just traded for Robert Quinn for the Bears, so they just have a more defensive tackle presence, and they're just playing good football right now. And this is definitely going to be one of the harder games for the Commanders to really try to win. What are you expecting this Monday night matchup and this NFC East matchup?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles have to lose at some point, right? I mean, they have to lose at some point. I think it won't happen this week, I don't think. I think the Commanders, it's a divisional game, and the Commanders' defense has been really solid as of late, so I think they are going to keep it close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. But the Eagles are just too strong on both sides of the ball. I think, especially at home in Philadelphia, primetime Monday night, I think, it's going to be a close divisional game like most divisional games are. But the Eagles will prevail. Like we saw last Thursday against the Texans, it was pretty close most of the way. But the Eagles were the better team and prevailed in the end. I think it's going to be a similar type of story or path, whatever you want to say it, in this game, where it's going to be pretty close in the first half, I think, and the Eagles will pull away late. We've talked about the dominance of A.J. Brown this year. I think that will continue. Dallas Goedert had a big game last week, and so we'll see if he can continue that. And then, Miles Sanders has really stepped up big time this season. It's kind of been less of a committee a bit, and more Sanders kind of being clearly back for the most part this week for the Eagles. The Commanders, McLaurin and Heineke and their connection. Curtis Samuel's kind of set up at times in the backfield of Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson now with McKissick sideline. So, there's not too much to like for the Commanders offensively, especially against a strong Eagles defense. But the defense will do enough to keep it close for most of the game. But the Eagles should pull away in the end and remain undefeated.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. This is definitely going to be one of the more closer games this week, I feel like, just because, these two teams know each other. The Eagles and Commanders have to play twice a year, obviously. Eagles, when are they going to lose? I don't think it's going to be this week. They have the better offense. Their defense is great. You mentioned the Commanders' offense, who, is decent, but, there's still questions on who the lead back is and, what the receiving core is looking like. Obviously, with McLaurin and Samuel, and when is Carson Wentz coming off of IR? I believe he's officially off next week. So there's rumors that he may be coming back next week. And what does that mean for Taylor Heineke, who has been playing somewhat decent? I would say honestly a little better than Carson Wentz. So there's definitely some questions on offense versus an Eagles offense that's still one of the best in the league, and then their defense is playing great right now. I expect it to be a lot closer, as you mentioned, but I believe the Eagles will go 9-0 and defeat the Commanders at home on Monday night, and I definitely agree with you there. All right, well, Ari, I feel like this is going to be wrapping up another episode of AKP Sports Talk, unless you got anything else you want to say.
No, yeah, I think we'll probably be back Monday or Tuesday recapping NFL games. And then the college football games this past weekend, or this upcoming weekend, I should say. And then we have MLB free agency starting soon, so we'll get into that probably next week, I would say. So thank you all for tuning in. As always, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, subscribe if you guys haven't already. Have a good weekend, and we will catch you all next week.